Well, I'm doing another podcast immediately after doing another podcast. The main reason I'm doing this is to make sure I know how to post this to Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So, yeah, I am out of work right now because yesterday, as I said in the earlier podcast, yesterday I was taken to a meeting at West Truck where I used to work, and unfortunately they permanently laid us off, many of us off, up to 100 people, which sucks, but it is what it is. Could be worse, but it is what it is. Anyhow, I have a lot of time on my hands, and I can't spend all day looking for a job because, well, we live in a era that you can't actually do it online and do it really quickly. I've already put in for several jobs, as a matter of fact, before realizing, maybe I need to stretch this out a little bit so that if I do have to document everything, I'm not having to do everything on one week and then not have anything to adequately apply for the next week. So, that leaves me a lot of time. And one of the things I'm going to be doing is binge watching some stuff. So I have been thinking about what I'm going to binge watch. The first, obviously, is The Expanse, which I've really not had a chance to get into. But I'm going to make time for it. There's obviously Star Trek Picard, which I've watched an episode of that, and I really liked it. The Expanse is just as dark as Battlestar Galactica, the new one, for those of you who don't know. So yeah, it's really very interesting, to say the least. I'm just been like maybe an episode and a half of that so far, but I really like it so far from what I've seen. There's The Man in the High Castle, which I've not watched yet. I've heard a lot about, but I finished that up. So yeah, I'm planning on watching that in the near future. But there's other stuff that I'm looking at, and it's one of those things that you have a lot of time on your hands. You can't spend it all worrying about looking for jobs and all that, so you gotta keep yourself occupied a little bit. And I'm also planning on writing some stuff, but I need some inspiration, so I'm going to be probably this weekend I'll probably be binge watching some stuff. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out how this thing works, because for some reason it's not posting it to Facebook or anything like that. So this is the only reason I'm really doing it, is just to see if it's posting to Facebook. So yeah. Anyhow, yeah, I have some ideas of what I want to binge watch, and let me take you down what I might be doing by going on my apps on my phone. I do have Netflix, and Amazon Prime and Hulu. I actually have Hulu, ESPN, and Disney Plus because of that little deal they got. On my list, I've got Hollywood, which I don't know much about. I think it's like, let's see what it says here. Post-World War II Hollywood. An ambitious group of aspiring actors and filmmakers will do almost anything to make their showbiz dreams come true. That sounds pretty interesting. I'll probably watch that. Last Kingdom. As Alfred the Great defends his kingdom from Norse invaders, Uhtred, born a Saxon but raised by Vikings, seeks to claim his ancestral birthright. That sounds interesting, although I've heard a couple of people say it's not the greatest of shows. Into the Night. Passengers and crew aboard a hijacked overnight flight scramble to outrace the sun as a mysterious cosmic event wreaks havoc on the world below. That's kind of one of those things I'm kind of wondering about. The Crown, which I've really heard a lot about. I've actually watched an episode of it. I may have to rewatch that one episode, but with King George as too ill to travel. That's actually the description of the second episode, so I've got to rewatch that. But you've probably heard of The Crown, so Avengers: Infinity War. I'm probably going to watch the entire Marvel universe from the beginning to just say that I've actually done it. I've got The Tudors on here. I watched the whole series back when it first came out on Showtime. Very good series. Brilliant detail. You really believe you're watching. You get lost in it. Where some shows, it doesn't, like the stuff on Stars, the White Queen and all that. That's not quite as good. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Solo, the Star Wars movie that they did, Designated Survivor, which I've got to watch because that sounds really interesting. It's the Kiefer Sutherland one where he's the lowly cabinet member that becomes president when the Capitol building gets bombed on the State of the Union. The West Wing, which I've only watched pieces here and there. Mad Men, same deal. I really love that show for one specific reason. Her name's Christina Hendricks. The 100, which a century after Earth was devastated by a nuclear apocalypse, 100 space station residents are sent to the planet to determine whether it's habitable. That sounds interesting. May have to check that out. BoJack Horseman. Meet the most beloved sitcom horse of the 90s 20 years later. He's a curmudgeon with a heart of not quite gold, but something like gold copper. Longmire, which I'm not big on the westerns, but it's one with Katie Sackhoff, so I might have to make an exception there. This contemporary crime thriller focuses on a Wyoming sheriff who's rebuilding his life and career following the death of his wife. Then you got House of Cards, which I stopped watching after the third season, so I may have to go in to rewatch that from the beginning. Then there's the new Lost in Space, which, for those of you who remember the original series, which I wasn't really big into, it was one of those things I watched, but it kind of, even back when I was a kid, it was kind of too cheesy for my taste. After crash landing on an alien planet, the Robinson family fights against all odds to survive and escape, but they're surrounded by hidden dangers. So, then there's The Two Popes, which was an Academy Award nominee. At a key turning point for the Catholic Church, Pope Benedict XVI forms a surprising friendship with the future Pope Francis, inspired by true events. That's very interesting because, as we all know, Pope Benedict XVI resigned. He resigned the papacy, and he's the first, I think, in 600 years to do that. You know, the only way you lose the papacy is to die, you know. And this is the first one in 6 centuries, from what I understand, that left the papacy. Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which I've watched before and I'll probably watch again. Then there's a Netflix series, The King. Wayward Prince Hal must turn from carouser to warrior king as he faces hostilities from inside and outside castle walls in a battle for England. It's got Robert Pattinson, who wasn't he not King Baratheon in the Game of Thrones? You got Black Mirror, which is an anthology series, which I need to really watch. It's kind of crazy. Then there's Madam's Secretary, which is the one with Tia Leone playing the Secretary of State, which I need to watch that. Another Life of Katie Sackhoff, which is the after a massive alien artifact lands on Earth, Nico Breckenridge leads an interstellar mission to track down its source and make first contact. I've never heard of one by the name of Nico that's English. That's an American or Canadian or whatever. So Nico sounds Japanese. So Then there's the movie Inglourious Basterds, which I really need to watch. And Portlandia, which I've only watched the Battlestar Galactica episode they did. Sex Education, which kind of, I might watch. The only reason I'm going to be watching is Gillian Anderson. I got a thing for her. There's Narcos, the true story of Columbus. Which Columbus we're talking about? Ohio, Georgia, North Carolina. Well, Columbus may have a deal with. Columbus, North Carolina may have a meth problem. I don't know. But it's the true story of Colombia's infamous, violent, and powerful drug cartels fuels this gritty gangster drama series. If you are fond of ESPN 30 for 30, watch the two Escobars. It'll talk about Carlos Escobar and Andres Escobar, the soccer player who was tragically shot and killed after he let in an own goal during Colombia's World Cup match with the United States back in 1994. That is a very good documentary, as are most of the 30 for 30 documentaries, which, since I have ESPN Plus, I will have to probably rewatch a lot of them. There's Reign, which is a vivid historical drama series, tells the rise to power of Mary Queen of Scots amid a court full of sexual and political intrigue, which probably isn't quite as good as the Tudors, but we'll see. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I need to watch because it's Marvel. John Carter. 1 minute, a Civil War veteran, John Carter is evading Apaches. The next, he's waking up on Mars, a once fruitful planet that's devolved into chaos. I've watched it before, and I'm amazed that Disney botched this. It's not the greatest sci-fi movie you'll ever watch, but it's actually pretty good. It has a lot of potential to further the story along. But Disney botched it so bad that it took me a while to actually watch it because I heard so many bad reviews about it. And when I watched it, I realized it's actually pretty good. It's not the typical sci-fi I like to watch, or write for that matter. But it's actually pretty good. Then there's Turn, Washington Spies. Set in 1778, this period drama recounts the story of Abe Woodhull, an American cabbage farmer obliged to begin spying on the British enemy. That sounds interesting. The Borgias, which I watched back in the day, much like the Tudors. Jeremy Irons makes this series because it's almost comical in a good way, the way he acts. He's really, really cool. There's The Dirt. In this unflinching biopic based on Motley Crue's best-selling book, 4 LA misfits navigate the monster highs and savage lows of music stardom. Okay. We'll see about that. The Hateful Eight, which is another Tarantino flick. Years after the Civil War, a bounty hunter and his captive are waylaid by a Wyoming blizzard and hole up in a way station with 6 dicey strangers. And then there's The Witcher, which you've probably heard about, which we'll see about. Into the Badlands, which I'm interested in. Dreaming of escaping to a distant city, a ferocious warrior and a mysterious boy tangle with territorial warlords and their highly trained killers. Okay. Extinction, which is plagued by dreams of an alien invasion. A family man faces his worst nightmare when an extraterrestrial force begins exterminating Earth's inhabitants, which looks interesting. Altered Carbon. After 250 years on ice, a prisoner returns to life in a new body with one chance to win his freedom by solving a mind-bending murder. Then you got Haven, which residents of Haven, Maine are plagued by supernatural afflictions. To reveal the truth, FBI agent Audrey Parker must delve into her own strange past, which I might give that a watch. Then there's Bodyguard, which is After helping thwart a terrorist attack, a war veteran is assigned to protect a politician who was the main proponent of the very conflict he fought in. Then you got Versailles, which is King Louis King Louis XIV of France commissions a lavish palace that becomes a fierce battleground for love and politics, and a gilded prison for nobility. Then you've got Colony, which when the LA is invaded by outside forces and becomes a walled-in settlement, a former FBI agent and his wife risk everything to find their lost son. That was on USA Network. Then you've got Travelers. A federal agent tracks 4 people who suddenly seem to possess entirely new personalities, leading to a startling discovery about humanity's future. Marco Polo, which is set in the world of greed, betrayal, sexual intrigue, and rivalry. Marco Polo is based on the famed explorer's adventures in Kublai Khan's court. And then there's A King's Speech, which you probably already know about. There's the Shannara Chronicles, which MTV did. After destruction of civilization, 3 young heroes becomes Earth's last hope for salvation when a massive force of demons threatens the planet. There's Jericho, which actually was a really good series back in the day. Jake returns to his Kansas town to collect an inheritance, but a nuclear blast cuts off the outside world and makes him a reluctant leader amidst chaos. That show really should have lasted for a long, long time. It's really, really good. But it's one of those things that came before streaming came along. And it was a show that probably was too good for broadcast television. So, yeah. Then there's Saving Mrs. Banks, which is when Walt Disney sets his sights on obtaining the rights to children's classic Mary Poppins, the book's author proves to be a tough nut to crack. Then there is Medici the Magnificent. In 15th century Renaissance Florence, the visionary Medici dynasty flexes its powers in politics and art, risking its rivals' lethal opposition, which kind of sounds like the Borgias. Then there's The People vs. O.J. Simpson, that show on Fox. The Assassination of Gianni Versace. Roman Empire, which is about the Roman Empire. Then you got Frontier, which is 18th century North America. Ruthless trappers and entrepreneurs fight to wrestle control of the fur trade for the mighty Hudson Bay Company. It's got Jason Momoa in it, which most girls love, and he's a really nice guy. I met him back in 2009. Really, really cool guy. Glad to see he's really doing well. There's Messiah. A wary CIA officer investigates a charismatic man who sparks a spiritual movement and stirs political unrest. A fictional story not based on true events. Thank goodness they pointed that out. Dark Matter, which is after waking aboard a derelict spaceship with no memories, the crew of the Raza investigates the mystery of their identities and destination. How it ends, worried about his pregnant fiancée amidst a sudden cataclysm, a young lawyer embarks on a dangerous road trip west with his future father-in-law. Then there is Norseman, which in 790 AD, the Vikings of Norheim have a hectic schedule that includes pillaging, plundering, enslaving others, and solving problems with violence, which sounds like a comedy. I think this is the comedic version of the Vikings. Troy follows a city, searching for a woman promised to him by Aphrodite. Herdsman Paris learns his true identity, and falls for Helen of Sparta, igniting the Trojan War. That's why you have the Helen of Troy, the face so beautiful it launched 1,000 ships. Well, there you have it. The Last Tsar, which is about the Romanovs, especially when social upheaval sweeps Russia in the early 20th century. Tsar Nicholas II resists change, sparking a revolution, ending a dynasty. Outlaw King, which is got Chris Pine in it for some reason. 14th century Scotland. Robert the Bruce claims the crown and leads a fierce uprising to win back his country's independence from English rule. Why they have an American playing that role is beyond me, but I'll see it to see how it goes. I Am Mother. Following humanity's mass extinction, a teen raised alone by a maternal droid finds her entire world shaken when she encounters another human. Interesting. Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story, which is an unearthed audio interview of Hollywood icon Hedy Lamarr reveals a woman with brains as well as beauty who was first to patent frequency hopping. So, for those of us who have cell phones and enjoy Bluetooth technology and Wi-Fi and cellular data and all that, thank this lovely lady for that. She's been no longer with us, but thank her for that. Then you've got Glow, which is based upon the old wrestling series back in the 1980s. In 1980s LA, a crew of misfits reinvent themselves as gorgeous ladies of wrestling, a comedy by the team behind Orange is the New Black. Then you got Bobby Kennedy for president. Historic footage and leading voices of the era examined the Bobby phenomenon of the 1960s and the legacy of a man who helped redefine the country. I really need to write this story, but I have a story in the back of my head that imagines what would have happened if Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X hadn't been gunned down in the 1960s. I need to write that story. Mars, fact meets fiction in this hybrid of scripted drama and documentary that chronicles a spacecraft's crew's mission in 2033 to colonize the Red Planet. I actually have that as before I left West Rock involuntarily because of a permanent layoff. I actually bought that series. It was on special on Vudu, like $10 for both seasons. So I bought that. I had to watch that, but it's actually available on Netflix. So, Sense8, from the creators of Matrix and Babylon 5, comes this 10 series in which 8 people can telepathically experience each other's lives. I read a lot about that series. Really, really good. Nightfall, which is 15 years after the Crusades ended and defeat, a veteran knight becomes master of his order, orders Paris Temple, and discovers a shocking secret. Chappaquiddick, which is of course based upon Senator Kennedy, as Senator Kennedy watches his future unravel in the wake of an infamous car crash as families and allies vie to protect his reputation. I'm going to take a moment to give you my theory about Chappaquiddick. I don't think Ted Kennedy had any malice to kill Mary Jo Kopechne. He was drunk, he crashed, it killed her, and he panicked. I think the reason he never came clean about this was deep down inside he never wanted to really be president. Because if Chappaquiddick didn't happen, Ted Kennedy would probably have been pushed to run for president in 1972 against Nixon. Wouldn't that have been interesting? I may have to write that story one of these days. And it would have been interesting to see how he would have handled situations like, could he have beaten Nixon in 1972 when Nixon was at the zenith of his power? I might have to write that story one of these days. But I've always felt like that was the ultimate example of unintentional self-destruction. The OA, 7 years after vanishing from her home, a young woman returns with mysterious new abilities and recruits 5 strangers for a secret mission. I'll check that out. Ultraman. Decades ago, a hero from the stars left this world in peace. Now the son of Ultraman must rise to protect the Earth from a new alien threat, which is based upon the Japanese series from back in my youth, which was kind of cheesy and all that, but kind of cool anyway. The Windsors, the all-too-public trials and tribulations of England's royal family, are reimagined as an over-the-top comedic soap opera. I'll give that a try. Uh, Amy, Rare Home Videos interviews with Amy Winehouse's inner circle offer an intimate look at her journey from charismatic teen to troubled superstar. Yeah, that I gotta watch because I'm still a big Amy Winehouse fan. It's sad that she passed away almost 9 years ago now. She was incredibly good at that. Occupation: when aliens take over their small Australian town, a modest group of survivors must unite to fend off their otherworldly intruders. I've heard really good stories about that, so yeah, that really is good. Destination Io. As a young scientist searches for a way to save a dying Earth, she finds a connection with a man who's racing to catch the last shuttle off the planet. Hey, can I get the shuttle off the planet? And there's others. There's Traitors. As World War II ends, a young English woman agrees to help an enigmatic American agent root out Russian infiltration of the British government. Let's see what else. There's other stuff. There's the Titan, which is on a bleak future Earth, a soldier endures a radical genetic transformation to save humanity, but his wife fears he's becoming more creature than man. Let's see what else. Mercury 13. After rigorous testing in 1961, a small group of skilled female pilots are asked to step aside when only men are selected for spaceflight. Another interesting story. What if they had not been asked to step aside? I may have to explore that. And that's all the ones I've got that are not. I got some Monty Python stuff on there and some other things that I've watched before. So yeah, that's my list on Netflix. Let's go to Prime Video. And this is going to exclude the aforementioned The Expanse and The Man in the High Castle. So yeah, let's go to my list. Let's see if I can find it on here. I watched Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, which that's an excellent movie. I watched Star Trek The Motion Picture. Reds I've never watched. That's an old movie from almost 40 years ago with Warren Beatty and Diane Keaton, which is based upon, I think it's the Russian Revolution. Canadian Bacon, which is one of the rare times Michael Moore actually went into doing a fictional movie, not a fictional movie, not a documentary, which is actually, it's a good comedy, not great, but it's enjoyable. It has a song that goes into my head, God Bless America Again. It's kind of funny. Day of the Siege, which I don't remember. In the summer of 1683, 300,000 warriors of the Ottoman Empire began to siege the siege of Vienna. The fall of the city would have opened the way to conquer Europe. On September 11th, when the main battle was between the Polish cavalry and the Turks. Interesting date. That reminds me. Wonder if Osama bin Laden, who was captured and killed on this day 9 years ago, I wonder if he selected September 11th for that very reason. I may have to watch that. That's interesting, because I tend to like that. 2036 Origin. I know I can watch that on YouTube, actually. There's another Marvel series, Captain America, Star Trek Insurrection, which I have watched, and it wasn't that great. The Next Generation cast did 4 movies. Generations, which was not great. It was a sign off for the old crew. Hello to the new crew. It was enjoyable, but it wasn't that great. First Contact was really good. Insurrection, no, it just was bad. Nemesis was not great, but not bad either. It's been proven over Insurrection. I think the problem with those movies is the fact that, excuse me, they were not really that great. I think they kind of reached their limit. I think that was at the epic, what I call Star Trek fatigue. That's the reason I think I got disinterested in Voyager and never really gave Star Trek Enterprise a shot, because I saw too much Star Trek. Boondock Saints I got to watch. Blade Runner 2049 I do have to watch. Black Hawk Down, which I kind of watched a little bit yesterday, which is rather intense. Morning Glory, which is an old school anchorman who quits his longtime evening newscast because of his new gossipy ways, is recruited by hotshot producers looking to revive a failing morning show. And there's another bunch of stuff in here that I've got to watch. So, there's Late Night. I may have to step off here. A lot of other things I've got to watch, but yeah. There's Man in the High Castle, Hunters, Jack Ryan, the movie Fighting for My Family about Paige, the wrestler, WWE, The Report, which is Adam Driver, which I think he's going to have a huge career after. He may be the Harrison Ford of the sequels. And by the way, speaking of the sequels, Rise of Skywalker comes on Disney Plus on Monday. Interesting note. Stargate, which I've got to watch. LBJ, which is Woody Harrelson playing Lyndon Baines Johnson. Napoleon, which is about Napoleon. And let's see what else. That's about it for that. So, anyhow, yeah, I just want to come on here because I want to test to see how this did, if it was actually showed up on YouTube and all that. So, let's see. Nope, not yet. I think this has got to end. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if it's on Facebook. On my Facebook profile. This thing can hurry. Is it on here? Did it post? No, it did not post. I gotta figure that out. Because we're going live, but for some reason. Anyhow, I ain't gonna worry about that. I've got some stuff to do. I figured I'd come on here and just do this for the heck of it. Talk to you later. Goodbye. Good luck. May good news be yours.